My name is Michael Kelly. I'm the founder of GIY, which stands for Grow It Yourself. And my new book is called the GIY Diaries. We're trying to demystify food growing. It's often seen as this very complicated, like horticultural pastime that you need like a degree in Latin to be able to understand. So we're trying to demystify it and give some really practical advice and inspiration for people to get started. I started growing my own food probably around the mid-2000s because I had a kind of a road to Damascus moment in the supermarket one day. Discovered some garlic I was about to buy was from China, and just started to grow my own just because I kind of wanted to figure out how it all worked and why were we importing from China, and managed to grow some garlic successfully the first year, even though I hadn't a clue what I was doing, and just got completely smitten by the whole thing from there. I think to get started with growing your own food, the first thing I think is just to get started. We tend to kind of put it off a little bit or feel like maybe we need to build up our skills first or whatever, but actually it's a very straightforward thing to do at the end of the day. Like most, when you plant a seed, it knows what to do. You don't have to whisper any instructions to it. So I think just give it a go. Don't be afraid of it. Definitely start with some of the easier things like salad leaves, and herbs are very easy to grow as well. So like get a couple of quick wins under your belt, and if things go wrong along the way, don't worry about it. Just keep going. It's enjoy the process as much as the result. Even in a relatively small amount of space, like we always say, if in GIY, if you have like the space of, say, the size of a standard car park space, you can produce about 50 kilos of food, which is about the equivalent of about a quarter of a family's veg needs in a year. So like even from a very small amount of space, you can still produce a really, an absolute mountain of fresh fruit and veg. I think like the number one benefit for me is probably the mental health benefits of it. I think it's such a mindful activity. You have to slow down and do it in the moment and get out of your head and get into your hands. So it's brilliant for your mental health, and it's just such a positive, optimistic thing. You're always looking 6 months down the road of what's going to happen, in next year's growing or whatever, and as a result, it's such to plant a seed in the soil. It's such a hopeful thing, to trust that it's going to turn into this food that you can eat. It's so improbable in so many ways, and I think just that optimism is just such a lovely part of it. Like growing food with kids is absolutely brilliant thing to do, and it's fantastic for children to know where their food is coming from. So like 3 big things for me would be like work with the bigger seeds that they can kind of, particularly for smallies, like the bigger seeds are easy for them to handle, things like beans and peas and squashes and pumpkins and so on, rather than the much smaller seeds like lettuce and carrots and so on. Second thing I think I'd say is just to focus on things that grow quickly. So like say radishes, salad leaves, things like that will come really quickly. But of course they will love things like pumpkins, down the tracks if there's a lovely big pumpkin to deal with, or sunflowers and so on. But the last thing, and I think it's the most important one, is just let them loose. Don't be afraid of them getting mucked up and splashing water all over themselves and so on, because that's the part of it that they really love. So just let them loose, and then when they're old enough, get them out there doing some weeding in exchange for their allowance, I think is a good plan as well. First book I ever read, like outside of a kind of school setting, the first book that I had in my hand, me personally, was an Agatha Christie one. I can't remember which one. Book I wish I wrote is called A Man Called Ove, which was just, we read it in a book club a couple of years ago, and it's just absolutely heartbreaking and beautiful and made me cry and laugh, and yeah, it was just an absolutely wonderful book. The book I'm reading at the moment is called Regenesis by George Monbiot. It's a very controversial read about the food system and trying to find a way to have a food system that's not costing the earth. So very topical, a little scary, but very entertaining.